What rough beast its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born?
Je dis ce que je pense et je vis comme je veux.
Hello and welcome to What Rough Beast. I'm Virginia Heffernan. What Rough Beast is the show where we bear witness to America's demise and try to determine what can be built from the rubble. Today we are imagining lots that can be built from the rubble. Emerging from the rubble last night was Zohran Mamdani, the mayor-elect of New York City, someone who has definitely run a galvanic campaign and excited many of us in New York, and it seems across the country, that something better than billionaire-backed sexual abusers could be possible for our country, which wouldn't have seemed to be too much to ask just 20 years ago, but seems like a revelation today. I had to get Kristianna Smith to join me today because she makes content on TikTok and does kind of liberatory work with communities, exactly the kind of thing that you can imagine a Trumpite, like a Russ vote, trying to stamp out if it took place at a university that got any kind of federal funds. But now that we know that the right has their own workshops on the Antichrist and on the rapture and on Christian nationalism and on whatever Nick Fuentes talks about, actual Hitler, I think that it's fair that we pay a lot more attention to the kind of workshops trying to shape the future of the left, the kind of workshops and work and practices and meetings and community structures that the left has been doing all along, that has landed us in a place where we could possibly begin to imagine a post-Trump world. So Kristianna Smith, I'm so excited to have her here. Kristianna, welcome to What Rough Beast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk.
So you may know that on this show, we don't mess around. Our job is to bear witness to America's demise, to the country's demise. So we don't kid ourselves that autocracy is rising or it's starting or we're seeing the beginnings of fascism. It's here. We started right after Election Day and we knew, this was it for the system that we had known.
Yeah.
And also we try to figure out what can be built from the rubble. And that seems very much like what you and your work try to do.
Yeah. So I call myself a liberation culture worker. And the way I've been explaining culture worker to people is like construction workers are going to figure out how to build a road and like how to build a building. And culture worker is like, how do we build connection between people? And I'm not like, I say liberation because culture workers built Project 2025. Like those, there, you know what I mean? Like there are people on every side of the spectrum doing this work. But my tagline on TikTok is somebody insatiably curious about how we bring our collective imagination to life. And I deeply believe that like even right now, like we are in our collective imagination, right? Like every single thing, like we're recording this the day after Mamdani has been elected, but like even 4 days ago, we were still in our collective imagination. Like it's not just when good things happen or bad things happen. It's like we're always in some sort of collective creation with one another. And that idea, like in my book is called Harvesting Chaos, because I'm like, even when things are falling apart, like we pick things up and we figure out what we want to build next from that stuff that's falling apart. Like, and the only way we do that is by really envisioning and imagining what it is that we want to exist. And I think that's where an American politic has just really failed most people. Like most people don't imagine what they want to exist in the world. They are like given choices and like, yes, which of these choices will I choose? And so as those choices have gotten worse and worse and worse, people have just been continuously, not just in voting, just in life, right? Like I will choose between whether I can afford rent or whether I can afford food. And I will choose about whether or not I will be able to be in a safe home, like without like domestic violence, or if I will be homeless instead and like outside of that violent environment. Like we are continuously just sort of choosing between whatever's offered to us rather than actively imagining the world that we want to be inside of.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I feel like we can't help but touch last night because
absolutely.
I was up late, you probably were too, watching Mamdani like let loose. Like he had been very, very, very careful, but very like game saying, what is it to be a socialist? I believe in the human dignity. I believe in dignity for all humans.
Yeah.
Or like, well, jalapenos, or like, oh, I'm hilarious. I'm dancing. I'm doing stuff. And then he just gets up there blammo after winning and is like, all of your dread fears that I am a committed, sincere, authentic, joyful socialist are true.
Yeah.
And the first person I'm going to cite is Eugene Debs.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like, and as the great Bill Clinton said, like, everyone together, right? He's just like Eugene Debs, blammo, the greatest socialist candidate the country's ever known. And now I am, collaboratively running this city. And this was not signaling. I almost felt like, okay, tell me if you think this is at all what you experienced. You know how the right always runs these people who are like, what? No, that's not a Nazi sign. I'm not a Nazi. I'm not a racist. And then they're like, I just believe that, in right to work states, or I just affirmative action's racist. And then they win and everyone's like, Roman salute. Like, and you're watching and you're like, I knew it. I felt like Andrew Cuomo and the billionaires must have been watching last night, just like the same way we watched Elon Musk with the Roman salute. Just the only he's not bad you are. You're me.
So yes, and I feel like one of the things that Zoran Mamdani did his entire campaign, which I actually think is something that Democrats refuse to do because they can't. When I say Democrats, I mean like sort of establishment Democrats.
Yeah.
Is that he just talked about the actions. Do you know what I mean? And I remember I have this vivid memory of coming home in 10th grade when we learned about socialism and telling my mother, who was born in the 60s, that I was a socialist. I was like, I mess with like, this is for me. Like, this is great. And the Red Scare took over her body. Like, I swear to goodness, like her whole being changed. And she just started like speaking frantically about how I wasn't a socialist and we don't believe in social. And I was like, okay. And I literally just stood there with my book open and like went down like all of the bullet points. And I was like, well, do you believe in this? Well, do you believe in this? And she was like, well, yes, yes, yes. And I was like, right. So you believe in socialism? And she was like, no, I don't like when you call it socialism. And I think that that's like where a lot of American people are. Like, I actually think that like the actions, the things, right? Like, I'm going to make buses free. I am going to tax really wealthy people. Like, I think that he was saying the actions rather than the label. And I think that for where people are and like how propagandized the American public is, like we actually do have to be talking about the actions first. And then we can talk about like the titles that we put on those actions, on those collections of thought. But I also think that we're in a moment where lots of people are using titles and then ignoring all the actions underneath them and are like, I believe in collaboration. And then like are creating the most like authoritarian small community gatherings you could ever be a part of. You know what I mean? So I think that it's like, that's action first, practice first is a really important for the moment that we're in.
Right. In some ways, it's like the opposite of dog whistling. It's like, it's that you're not using metaphors and shorthand. You're actually just using a policy plan that sounds completely common sense instead of, I'm just trying to liken it to the other side, but instead of running on, just the simple fact that that Mamdani as a culture worker, like you're describing, so someone who's like out to
build how we connect with each other.
Yeah. And like who's cultivating and getting to flourish various new memes, energizing memes. And somehow, obviously this is like the wish of anyone who works in culture is to like, get to seed in some tiny way, like a new idea into the culture. And somehow the way that he did it, which could never be reverse engineered, made affordability and not crime the problem facing New York City.
I think that we can, and I think that he talked to people like they were smart and then said the common sense solution is the right one. And I think that oftentimes because of the money inside of politics, right? Like because we really are working in this weird class, like whenever somebody's like, do you think the split is in age? Do you think the split is in like right or left? I'm like, the split is in class. Like most of the time it's like really like, that is really where the split tends to be. And I think he just spoke through, which is all the like MAGA for Mamdani people, like people understand its affordability. It's where they place the blame of affordability, right? They're like, well, it's obviously the poor people who are getting food stamps that are making things unaffordable. And that's a propagandized tool, right? And so by saying like, actually, this person makes more money than any human being could make. And if we just take 1%, 2% more of their dollars, everybody would be good.
Yeah.
That's a common sense solution. And I think that like we're just used to a politic where we don't talk to individuals like they are full people that can understand complex
Right.
situations. We talk like politicians tend to speak to people as though they are dumb or as though they are easily manipulated. And then
Yeah.
like what we end up blowing up on like national scales.
I think that's right. I mean, the consultancy class or the mainstream Democrats, the Schumers, the Jeffries, and even in New Jersey and Virginia, where like they've run more centrist candidates, bless them. Like they seem to know their audience and
Yeah.
they will be a million times better than their opponents. But that consultant class that makes politicians look and act a certain way, a certain kind of scared way that we like now, associate with Hillary Clinton is the one that says people like the population works mechanistically. Like there's certain buttons you have to push, and like you can read any airport nonfiction bestseller about like what happened when the magic thing where ragu introduced this tomato into this thing is it took advantage of how stupid the blah
Yeah.
blah blah are.
Yeah.
And like you're supposed to be understanding human nature. Like I'm doing this philosophy app. I don't know. I thought it was interesting at first because it had this like taught me some ancient philosophy, but it got later into marketing and psychology, which is just probably has eaten all of intellectual discourse in America, which is just as if like PR propaganda, Goebbels style thinking was not like a terrible thing to critique and to like quarantine as the worst way of thinking about discourse
Yeah.
and instead became like, see, you all can do it. All can get as many hits and likes and dollars and thing by manipulating people. And like Barnamism, I don't know what it is. But so instead of talking to people, they keep saying Mamdani didn't have consultants. He clearly didn't have consultants. His campaign manager had no experience doing it.
Yeah.
That his consultants were the people that he was trying to serve.
Yeah, and I think as somebody who like pays attention to local politics, like most of the time that's what your local politician is doing. Like the person who's running for your like city council seat, right? Is actually just going out and talking to a bunch of human beings. And
Yep.
I think that we believe that people are dumb. And the thing is like when we don't have relationship with people, it becomes a lot like I talk about this in my book and in my work. Like I
Yeah.
say relationship is the most abundant resource on the planet. When we don't have relationship with people, it's easier for them to trigger our like fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And so then all of those big stories that we have about like the scary person or the bad person or the villain or the monster or whatever, those are a lot easier to interject. The more, and I think Mamdani did this beautifully, like the more you're just a human being, a
Mhm.
complex human being that I'm not always going to agree. Some of the best politicians I know will say, I'm not always going to agree with you, but I'll listen to your point of view. Like
Right.
the more we get into this place where we can be relational and we can actually connect human to human, now I actually have a lot more space to have complex, not just discourse, but conflicts. Like we can actually say like, we don't agree with that, but now we're like doing a very different thing than when I make you the other. And now I get to put all these like monstrous things on top of you
Right.
rather than you're a human being and I'm a human being. And actually that person who's on Snap is a human being and that dude over there is a human being and we're all just trying to figure out how to human together
Yeah.
and we decided that this weird way was the way to human together. Why don't we try this other thing? And at that like from that vantage point people tend to have like a much more expansive place because you're not talking to them like they're children who should just tell you who the boogeyman is, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing that right, it sounds so simple, and every time someone wins, it sort of drives me crazy, is that every time someone wins, like after 2024, the presidential election, we're like, Kamala Harris, what a disaster. Well, Trump's a super candidate. He's just perfect or whatever. Where after the Super Bowl, we don't do the same thing of like, the losing team is just completely a nightmare. They
Yeah,
never should have been at
yeah.
the Super Bowl, right? Like it's like, the winds blow one way or the other. At the same time, it was like culturally decisive campaign and victory and incredibly, incredibly moving in ways. I mean, I know you're not in New York, right? And
No, I'm not in New York. I'm in Connecticut. So I'm gonna
okay.
say that we definitely my local election, we've had a Republican mayor for 12 years. There was one Democratic term, and the Republican mayor we just had, her dad was mayor for the 10 years before that. So for like over 20 years, we've had Republican control, and
Yeah.
our entire, like, every seat the Democrats could have won last night, they won locally.
Whoa.
Which was like a very bit, and I live in a majority minority city. I live in what I would describe as a pretty purple community.
Okay.
And it was just like a very decisive, like, win across the board. And I will say, I went to the polls and there was some, like, a little old lady at the polls who was like, I'm just excited for what's happening in New York. Like, literally while I was in, like,
Whoa.
putting my ballot in. So, I do think that there is a collective effect, right? Even when we
Yes.
see like a candidate who's somewhere over there, it like
Yeah.
does do something to us where we're like, actually, I can go and like vote in my local election. If I can't vote for Mamdani, maybe I'll just go and vote for whoever. And I think that we're probably seeing Democrats across the board who got boosted by the excitement that Mamdani was creating.
So where do you see some moments? Because it was a very cinematic campaign. I mean, there was so much video that came out of it, and
Yeah.
it's just it lived there. I don't know how much like tweeting or blue skying or whatever he did, but it was just a very visual campaign. And I wonder if there are any moments in the campaign that stood out to you as kind of exemplifying what you're talking about, like how culture is made or how chaos is harvested, as you say in your book.
Yeah, I think that something that I was a little bit nervous, but also a little bit obsessed about was how Mamdani holistically responded, not to the anti-Semitism and like anti-Muslim sentiment that like came to his way, but specifically like his choice of words in October 7th and the press release that he did on October 7th, because he did this thing that I actually deeply wish more politicians would do. As me personally, like, I believe that like we should be in a world outside of the current electoral politics that we have. Like, I really think we probably need another constitutional like, I think we need to like scrap and rebuild, like, like, I think that like it was started broke and it's not getting fixed anytime soon.
Yeah.
So like that's like for me the trajectory of reality is like, I'm like, where do we get to a point where we're actually creating some sort of structurally cared electoral politic that we can participate in?
Yeah.
And until we get there, we have to realize that, again, like, the person who's going to be the mayor of New York, the person who's going to be the president is residing over this huge swath of ideologies.
Yeah.
And how do they stand wherever they stand with integrity,
Yeah.
right? And not
Yeah.
just like go one way or the other. And so the acknowledgement that like there were people who died on like that the Nakba is not okay. Like,
Yeah.
it was this complex, and he did this constantly. Like,
Mhm.
it was not like a leftist dream of a response. It was, I would say it was probably something that an abolitionist like myself, or transformative justice, like somebody who's interested in liberation, is like, actually we have to talk about all of it. Like, we have to talk, like, we can't just like keep
Right.
picking good guys and bad guys and like swinging one way or the other. Like, we
Yeah.
have to talk about the complexity of the middle. And I was just so curious about how his stance in that, like, I had seen him like sort of drop these authentic takes throughout the campaign. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, did he just die? Like this is it. Like, the
Hmm.
momentum is done. And what I saw in the backlash and in the like feedback of that were people being like, oh, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate, but there is a kind of candidate who I'm going to be able to tussle with. And I talk in my book, I talk about productive conflict. Like, we can tussle with one another to find a better way. And
Yeah.
I think that that's like something we do not see from politicians. We see from politicians a very paternalistic, like, follow me. I know everything. You don't know what I know. I have this secret room that I go to make all the things work out. Whoops, I guess the things in my secret room didn't work out, but don't worry, next time I'll get it done. And I just saw him on the streets, like, even like outside of the cutesy things, like really
Yeah.
willing to have long, complex, like integral, like standing in integrity
Mhm.
responses. And watching his momentum build after that response, I was like, yeah, that's a different type of electorate, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's actually something I think that we're craving, like, in an era where like we sometimes like get hits off of just like critiquing one another. Somebody who's
Mhm.
like, actually, I have this messy middle of a reality that I want to talk to you about. For
Mhm.
me, stand in that and be honest about that. And if you don't like it, that's fine because that's still the thing that I believe. And I
Yeah.
think that's the type of integrity that, like, when you hear like people who are like, well, we used to have different types of politicians, like, I think that they're talking about this ability to hold complex realities together without
Yep.
falling into paternalism, without falling into hero worship. And I think that people are hero worshiping Zohran Mamdani. Like, I think that we are going to have to pull people back and be like, isn't it so great that we picked this person that we can hold accountable? Like, isn't it so
Right,
wonderful?
right. Why are we looking forward to giving him hell too?
Yeah, that's like,
The
this is the
yeah,
perfect candidate to push on. Like, that's really like, that's to me, that's what a liberatory politic looks like. You're like,
yeah.
I picked the perfect person to annoy. You
Yes.
might listen to me when I go to annoy them.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I like that. Right, a worthy opponent. Yeah, that I like that. Let's just get into the heart of Mamdani's really pretty tireless efforts to address concerns that he is anti-Semitic or that he's anti-Israel or that he's bad for the Jews or that he like posed some kind of threat to Jewish New Yorkers because I think I should say that while I'm not Jewish, lots of my family, my ex-husband are and are New Yorkers and are actually kind of quite conservative on some of these issues. And they were afraid. And that group of people were afraid of Mamdani. And I had to understand that fear in as incredibly, incredibly primitive and formative and really just understand like they were fucking terrified. And a lot of them voted for him, but and I think, if they watched him last night, they realized like he was not exactly coming out there saying like, and now the pogroms begin. If you were going to be afraid, you're probably like billionaires should be afraid. And they were right that he's communist leaning. And all of that was correct, but it is not correct to say that he is anti-Semitic or like wants to blow Israel up tomorrow. So I hope that they feel relieved. But it was interesting to watch certain Jewish New Yorkers like really feel like they had to take a leap and also wrestle with we're just like down to the bone. We're down to the quick, like
Yeah.
to the hardest, scariest parts of our ids in elections like this.
And I think that it's so the farther up you go, the farther away from like the self you are, right? Like the harder that like relationship building, tension holding is possible. And I think that ultimately this is why like having a really informed and really involved electorate is important
Yeah.
because when you have a human being that you know and trust and love who is trying to communicate with you authentically, not trying to manipulate you into like agreeing with them, but is
Yeah.
tell me your fear so I can like assure you and basically ground your survival mechanisms, like
Right.
your nervous system regulate. And I think that like we just live in a world where our systems like do know how to poke those buttons. Okay, I don't know if you ever watched this movie, but Batman, I think it was Batman Returns.
I don't think I saw that one.
It's an old one. It's an old one. I'm pretty sure
Okay.
George Clooney was Batman.
Oh God. Okay. Now, all right.
Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger was, oh my gosh, what was his name? Anyways, Ice, Victor Freeze.
Okay.
And Uma Thurman was Poison Ivy, and she had Bane, who was like the super soldier, and she literally would like hit this button on him, and his muscles would like bulk up, right? And that is what I think. Like I use it a lot to describe like what our nervous system is like when it gets triggered, right? Like when
Oh, yeah.
somebody hits somebody hits the shame button, or somebody hits the fear button, or somebody hits, and then we like bulk up into this version of ourselves that's like, I'm gonna fight you. And I think that we have like there are people who invest millions upon millions upon billions of dollars to trigger those responses in people. And they have been actively since October 7th and since like I think the sort of breaking of some of the, the more connected we are online, the more we start to see stories of regular people, the more we're like, wait, was that propaganda that I was given? Or like, wait, I didn't understand the same thing with me and my mom in the like textbook, right? It's like
Right.
we start to be like, wait, I don't quite understand why we are bombing kids that need food. Like, I don't quite
Right.
and I think that as that happens, like as people do peopling things to connect with one another, lots of money is poured into making sure that people are too much in their nervous system to be able to
Yeah.
listen or confront those difficult things, right?
it's both like too deep in your limbic or either whatever system, but also too abstract. So like one of the
Yeah.
interesting things is a conversation with your mom, in that conversation with your mom, which I'm sure you must tell that in some of the workshops because it's brilliant. I mean, I actually want to go back to it. So your mother gets some kind of flashback Red Scare thing in her head, which is just like if your child says they're a communist or like is tilting toward the Soviet Union, pretty soon we're in breadlines
Yeah.
or like or
She
they're
was
pretty
like, she said
yeah.
Russia at some point. I was like, what are you talking about?
Right. 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 So right. So all those connections have been made and they're not definitely not native to her. They're not like,
No.
oh, I've just always, recognized that market capitalism was the only way to human flourishing, right? It's a like deeply held belief. It's like someone I mean, I've definitely had that where you're like, well, I've probably told the story on this show before, but my friend and collaborator, Mike Albo, who has a book out this month called Hologram Boyfriends, we were talking in 2003, I think, and I had just gotten a job with the New York Times, and we were um, I was explaining to him how excited I was because I was about to get married and I was about to go to the New York Times and I had looked at this like New York Times benefits and I was like, I'm going to have stock options and then I'm going to have a baby because I'm going to have this amount of leave time and then I'm going to go back and I can work and I can even get 6 weeks off for the
Yeah.
second baby and then they have a pumping room so I can whatever and then I'm going to be able to have a second child and then we're going to move blah 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 and Mike just went, wow, dare to dream. I have never thought that way again. It just anytime I hear myself sounding like Susie Orman, like K-ish, I'm just like,
Mhm.
dare to dream, where did I get this language from? It's like your mom being like, no, you cannot do that.
I
You
mean,
must
we're programmed, right? Like we're
we're so
indoctrinated with
programmed.
very clear beliefs and very clear ideas.
I can
I
tell
did
you right before he said dare to dream, to the moment he said dare to dream, I was like, I have the clear best plan that any human has.
nothing could ever interrupt this plan whatsoever. It is in gold or like it is solidified completely. And this is like what the reason I do so much imagination work, like on my TikTok and in my actual work. And the reason I do so much imagination work is I started just doing stuff that was like, okay. And then like we do conflict with each other and we do self accountability work with each other. And then we go ahead and like, I would do this. I do a program and the last exercise in the program is like imagine like your life 10 years from now or something like that. Like what is it like? And then I was doing this and I was like, this is this throwaway prompt at the end of the hard thing where
Yeah.
we've done all this work on shame and conflict and that. And people were like, I won't look at it. I won't do it. I have no interest in that. They would sob. Like people would literally be sobbing at me. And they were like, every time I try to imagine beyond right now, I like can't do it. And so I spent an entire year just doing imagination work and like just working with people about like, can you tell me what you want? And so often people are like, I don't know what I'm allowed to say that I want. And I was like, it's an imagination in your head. You're allowed to say anything you want.
DTD, dare to dream. Don't.
But like, go ahead. Like, can't strategize towards things we can't imagine. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
Yep.
a lot of times people have been really bootstrapped in their ability to even imagine something. And the thing they say they're imagining is just what they're willing to compromise for. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so then if I'm offering you, if it's a negotiation and I'm offering you the thing I want, but that's already a compromise, then the
Yeah.
compromise is going to be even less than that. And I think
Right.
like what we saw really successful in the Mamdani campaign was he was like, I'm going to make buses free to ride. I'm going to do like, these are the things like, he wasn't like, and now let's compromise down from there before I
Mm,
even get elected. That doesn't make any sense. And I think that like as individuals and as collectives, we have to get better at saying like, what is it that we want and say it often because to look at the other side, they're saying very clearly what they want. You know what I mean?
right.
Like they are not
Right.
hiding in any way, shape, or form the dream of America that they have. These billionaires want us to be as incarcerated as possible. They want the reemergence of the company town in mass. They're trying to own all the water on the planet. Like they have a very clear dream of the world. And it is that people are another resource that they can exploit.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
only thing that we can really do to combat that level of an imagination is to have a really clear imagination of what we want to be living inside of, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I usually say, like, for me, liberation is a structurally care-centered world where we're all able to move in the freeness of our being. So I
Mhm.
believe that, like, the structures of the world should be set up to take care of us. Like that, like if it is, whether that's healthcare or whether that's education or recreation or food and shelter, that like the purpose of the structures that we create are to care for one another and the planet, hopefully,
Mhm.
and that everybody gets to be whoever they are, like
Yeah.
inside of that care. And like to the community you were telling me about in Copenhagen, I think
Yeah.
that's what they were starting to like realize, like, oh, we can't just have it be like people are, you're an anarchist. And I was like, not really, because like I actually do have an expectation of care. Like I have an expectation of how there's
Right.
some like base humanity, dignity stuff that I think that we should move from first.
Mhm.
And then, we can talk about all the other stuff on top of that.
Yeah.
But if we don't say what we imagine, like, then we don't move towards it. We can't strategize. Like, how are we going to make a strategy towards something we are too afraid to name out loud?
Right. And what I am glad about, I'll be thinking about for a long time, that conversation you had with your mom, because when he cited Eugene Debs, Mom Donnie did in the beginning of his speech, through the whole thing, I thought, is something thawing? Like, is this like, this is the, three Virginia who was like watching Reds as a junior socialist and being like, something's possible out in the world. And I swallowed that, right? Like mostly. I mean, most of, and a lot of times was like, oh yeah, well, those people didn't like get to go to the Sephora sale or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, and also they're so mopey and like they don't really recognize how cool like bankers are or whatever. I don't know what I thought, right? And I was like, Reagan's like morning in America. And also like I gotta go out there and make a living. And all those people who are like, I did these like hippie plays about nuclear war on the side of the road for like ACLU lawyers or whatever. And I was like, those days are behind me. I'm like walking around in my,
I'm
New York.
serious now.
I'm a serious person. And I'm a serious person. And I'm like, I want some money, basically.
Yeah.
And then like, all this stuff has been so curdled and then perverted so much that, from 2016 on, it's just been this like onslaught of like, who am I? What compromises have I made? Distancing myself more and more, first from Trump, then from reasonable Republicans, then from regular neolibs, then from centrists, and like just finding myself comfortably back, just being like, Elizabeth Warren says normal things and everybody else says crazy things. Like, I don't understand. Why is it? What's the difference? Anyway, and then last night I was like, I want to go back to that like socialist little girl and be like, just have a really happy conversation with her and be like, this could be possible. Like, there
Yeah.
could be a thing. Like, you might not have to just totally erode everything that you ever hoped for.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think that it comes back to like I've been saying this word imaginating a lot because I feel like people don't really understand what manifesting is. Like
Oh, yeah.
this combination of imagining something and then creating the conditions for that thing to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that it's such an important part of us doing what we do in real time, like as human beings, to say, like, I actually am not going to compromise on my imagination of a thing. I'm going to keep, like, harvesting chaos to me is like, I keep moving towards that thing over and over again. That's
Mhm.
something that, like, every Black elder I've ever worked with or learned from has, like, repeated, like, okay, we're not there yet, but we're on the way to the thing that we are moving. Like, we're on the way to liberation, we're on the way to freedom. But we don't do that by going backwards or like setting up camp in a place that like doesn't fit us, right? Like we
Right.
say like that is this, we're on the journey towards that place. And I also just want to share like this other really quick story, which is like I was doing some community work around unemployment, and people were like, the reason people are unemployed is that they're lazy. And I had these like park and rec workers come up to me after like me talking to a bunch of people, and they were like, can we just agree that the reason people don't have jobs is because they're lazy? And these are guys who like they're out fully clothed in the middle of a hot summer day, like doing yard work, right? And I was like, well, don't you think your boss is lazy? And they literally like stopped. They were like, "What?" And I was like, "Some people are lazy and make lots of money."
Right.
And some people might be lazy, but they're working their ass off to try and like survive. I don't really think that
Right.
lazy is the determining factor. And I
Yeah.
think the more that we can sort of break apart our internalized and communal, stories, right? Like as like somebody who is rooted in storytelling, like the more we break apart those stories that tell people that like, well, there's a reason that person is suffering and it's their own fault. And there's a reason that you can't actually be real happy and it's your fault. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like the more we break that stuff apart, we actually get to have these conversations where we go, okay, could we at least try something? And like universal basic income, every time they try it, people make more money, are happier, do better. Like, I'm always like, give me 10 years to try some crazy shit and see what happens. Like,
Yeah.
I think that we really have to embrace iterating and trying and imagining that we can keep moving towards better rather than, well, aren't I safe enough right now? Because it's very clear that you're not safe enough right now, that safety erodes very quickly in these
Yeah.
in these conditions. And so why not shoot for the start? Why not dare to dream?
There's your dream. I might need like an old-fashioned poster of that, but with some imaginate, dare to dream. Um, all right. Thanks so much for being
Thank you
here,
for having
Kristianna.
me. I really appreciate it.
Before we go, tell everyone how they can find you and about how to get your book and what your book is.
So you can find me at kristiannasmith.com, which is where you can find my Patreon. I have a Praxis page where I put up workbooks and writings about like how we can bring liberation into the everyday. And you can also find my book, Seed Packets for Liberated Practice, Harvesting Chaos Collection, which is how we do liberatory work on the everyday, how we bring transformative conflict into our relationships and into like ourself and how we do self-accountability work together.
It's great. Thank you again so much. I will have you back.
Thank you. Absolutely. I would love to come back. You have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
This episode of What Rough Beast is dedicated to Zoran Mamdani. This show was produced by Richard Stanislaw. Brianna Snyder edited the show, and John Jeremiah Sullivan recorded our theme song, Je dis que je pense et je vis comme je veux, which was originally written and recorded by the French pop star Antoine. Go look him up. He's still alive, Antoine. Richard, you okay?